Good evening, guys. It's Ajax 0, Liverpool 1 in the Champions League this evening. Welcome to Football-Oranje. We're here to talk about the game. And if you're live watching with us right now, please do put some comments in the live comments on YouTube right now, and we'll hopefully read them out on the show. We've got two guests tonight. One, of course, isn't a guest. We've got Mike here, the Football-Oranje editor, and we've got Paul, who from the Liverpool Echo, commonly found on the Blood Red podcast. Paul, thanks for joining us tonight, and a good result for Liverpool in the Champions League.
Yeah, a tremendous result. Obviously, it's been quite a turbulent few days and weeks for Liverpool, with especially what happened in the Merseyside derby on Saturday, and losing Alisson Becker to an injury as well. And then obviously that was compounded by the injuries to Virgil van Dijk and Thiago in that game against Everton. But Ajax, it's clear tonight, is still a very good team. Obviously, it's a different team to the one that got to the semi-finals of the Champions League a couple of seasons ago. But it's a cracking result for Liverpool. Really, what they needed.
Yeah, and Mike, from a Dutch football perspective, Ajax tonight, what did you make of them? Did you think that it was a strong performance in Europe?
I think they were quite unlucky. I think that Ten Hag had a game plan that was sort of ruined in the first 8 minutes when Kudus went off. I'd like to see what happened if he had stayed in, because his intensity in the midfield was evident from the get-go when he was charging down the Liverpool defenders. I think, if Ajax took their chances tonight, then could have been a totally different game. You got to look at that Promise one at 0-0. I mean, that's a shocker of a miss. Then he had other chances after that, class and unlucky in the second half to hit the post. I think tonight just goes down to a bit of, yes, it's a bit unlucky for Ajax. The own goal was unfortunate. I think Manny did excellently to skin Skurs, but Thiago just couldn't sort his feet out, and it's unfortunate. And then on another day, Promise buries his chance. It's a different game. I think opportunities were there for Ajax tonight, just didn't take them.
And Paul, from a Dutch football perspective, we've also got our eyes on Van Dijk and Wijnaldum. Van Dijk, of course, out for a long period of time now. How did you find that Liverpool handled without him tonight against what is a very technical Ajax front line?
Yeah, there were obviously concerns with Virgil van Dijk. I think it's well regarded that he's the best centre-back in world football at this moment in time. But credit to Fabinho, not for the first time this season. He played there against Chelsea, against Timo Werner, and was very impressive. And I thought tonight he was one of Liverpool's most outstanding players. But, as Mike just said a moment ago, this scoreline could well have been different. I thought Liverpool managed the game pretty well in the second half. And in the end, probably just about deserved it. But Ajax did have those big chances. Mentioned Klaassen hit the post. There was the Promes one, and Tadic may think he should have scored again, but brilliant clearance off the line by Fabinho. So even though I take encouragement from it, because obviously Liverpool are going to be out without Van Dijk for a long time now, and Fabinho proved tonight that I don't know if he's going to be the best replacement, but he's certainly an able replacement if Matip and Gomez aren't fit. And then we'll have to wait till January to see if they bring in another player. But I think Ajax will probably go away from the game tonight with a few regrets, because, as I say, Van Dijk out, Alisson out, Liverpool, having to find a new way of playing because they're so two key players to them. They feel a few regrets that they've not actually taken something from the game.
Yeah, sure. I personally thought Ajax were very unlucky tonight, considering some of the performances we saw from them previous to their time under Ten Hag in Europe. That was a vast improvement on that, and it's still showing a very strong Ajax team. It's not the one, of course, that had De Jong, De Ligt, and what have you, but a slight improvement on last season. And it was a shame tonight that Ajax are missing Anthony. Can't actually get one of his live comments up on screen, but I've just seen it on my phone here that Dave said that Ajax were very unlucky. Liverpool had luck for the goal and had luck on many occasions. Ajax missed Anthony's trickery up front. I think it was a big miss tonight, Mike. Neves, Tadic, Promes all had some good ideas, but they just seemed a little bit off it. And I think Anthony's has been pretty sharp so far this season. He was missing.
Yeah, I think that Anthony's has that spark and a little bit different than the rest of the attackers. And I think he would have brought something totally different. And he's a better finisher than what they have with Neres and Promise as well. I think he would have added something else to the attack. But that's what I say. I found Ten Hag's substitutions a bit strange towards the end. I think for me, you got two strikers on the bench. If you're 1-0 down, I would have switched him. He brought on Kellenkamp and Labiad first, and then Huntelaar and Traore on late in the game. If I would have done them the opposite way around, I think that just towards the end, it was clear that the front line was tiring or struggling to create chances, and then I think I would have brought in something different up top. I found that pretty strange. They brought in somebody like Labiad who doesn't have a lot of pace, doesn't really bring much to the attack. When he left, Traore he's a big, powerful striker on the bench. But I think that Anthony was the big miss for Ajax tonight.
But on the positive side, there were some great performances from the likes of Daley Blind, who's shown again all that experience he's got. And on the opposite end of the spectrum, Perskers really making a great impact in central defence. It's just another comment saying that he was excellent tonight. What did you make of him, Mike, from that an Ajax point of view, but also a Dutch national team point of view, that this guy's got great potential and could be one of the next players that moves on from Ajax in a year or so, with games like this being very important in his development?
Yeah, if I had a strong game, apart from the goal, I think he got taken out by Mane, but some of the best defenders in the world will get taken out by Mane in his pace. I think he recovered from that well, made a few important blocks, and there's a few times where he stepped out of the defence with the ball and he started attacks. I thought he did really well tonight in the defence, and for such a young age, on his Champions League debut, that it's a great performance. I thought Ryan Gravenberch as well, he did really well at times on the ball, only 18 years of age in his first Champions League game. I thought he was excellent as well. There's definitely talents here, and there's a lot of talent in the squad that can get Ajax out of this group. It just wasn't their night tonight, and I think they're just a bit unlucky. Yeah,
Paul, what did you make of Ajax as a whole package, and do you still see them as a bit of a threat in terms of getting out of this group, or do you think Liverpool are going to see this out quite comfortably now after a win tonight like this tonight?
I think this was a huge win for Liverpool. As I said earlier, I think they were slightly vulnerable. Still a fabulous team. You can see that by the fact that they can bring the first choice front three off and then bring three players of the quality of Shaqiri, Jota, and Minamino on. But it's the big game for Ajax is obviously next week against Atalanta. They've started the group stage impressively by sweeping aside Midtjylland tonight. I think given that result tonight, Liverpool, even though they've obviously had great success in the Champions League in recent years, getting to a final, then winning it before being knocked out of last season's competition, probably a bit unfortunately by Atletico Madrid, away from home, they've not actually been that impressive, particularly in the group stages. And I think of quite a few recently of their campaigns, it's gone to like the last match because their away form has been poor. So this is a really big result for tonight. And I do think it probably, even though it's very early days in the group stage, I think it gives them a real good chance of finishing first, which would suggest to me that it's probably going to be between Ajax and Atalanta for second, which I imagine many people predicted in the first place. But no, I was quite impressed by Ajax tonight. Some of the names that Michael mentioned there, I'd agree with, and also Davy Klaassen, who obviously Liverpool fans will know because he played for their Merseyside rivals Everton, and he didn't have the best of time at Everton, to be honest. But he was slightly unfortunate because it was a time of mass change. Even though Ronald Koeman was there, a fellow Dutchman, they'd lost Lukaku and Barkley, and Klaassen was 1 and 3 number 10s they brought in along with Rooney and Sigurdsson. And he never really showed what he was about there. I know it improved when he went to Werder Bremen, but tonight I was quite impressed by him. Some really key passes, and as we mentioned earlier on the show, he was very unlucky with the shot that hit the post.
And the man who was unlucky tonight to score the own goal, Tagliafico, for me, I thought that he was he's making these tiny mistakes because I think his mind's still elsewhere. He clearly wants to leave Ajax in the summer because he felt like he'd eat all he could out of the club from a sort of European point of view. The league he thought was strong enough and wanted a bigger challenge. And it's little things like that tonight which suggest to me that his mind still isn't quite in it for Ajax. What are your thoughts on him, Mike?
Yeah, I think he's had a poor start to the season. I think he got a red card early on in the Eredivisie campaign. He has been making mistakes so far in his campaign. It was clear that he wanted to move, but the clubs that were in for him just didn't want to pay for him. And Atletico got linked, Chelsea got linked, even Leicester got linked. Nobody really came in for him. He's at Ajax now, and he just has to, get his mind on the game, because if he doesn't start playing well, then these big clubs aren't going to come back in for him. And there'll be less and lesser clubs that come in. So, he has to pick up his performances. If he wants to play for the biggest clubs in the world, then he needs to perform in the Champions League. And I think he was a bit off tonight. I think he was unlucky for the own goal. He just couldn't sort his feet out. I think you'll see an improved Tagliafico as the campaign goes on.
Yeah, I think so too. Once he gets his mind back into it. Paul, can I get your opinion, please, on what you thought of some Ajax players tonight? Particularly their potential. We had a comment here, which I think I can now finally show on screen, from Dave. And I know was a bust. No idea why big teams don't look at anyone but him. Were there players tonight where you thought that player has a potential to play for Liverpool? Players that you think can really do well at the top in Europe? We've seen De Jong, De Ligt do that now. They've moved on to clubs really high up in high echelons in Europe. Are there any players that are playing for Ajax now that you think could follow suit?
I wouldn't say I'm an expert of the kind of the young players that are coming through Ajax. Obviously, like a lot of football fans are very aware of the team that got to the Champions League semi-finals. Watching tonight, I probably wouldn't say there was one that stood out as someone who could go into Liverpool's lineup just because the level is so high now. You know, even since that win in Madrid, Liverpool's squad has just got stronger and stronger, as evidenced by the fact that they can make substitutions like they make tonight, and it didn't particularly harm them. I thought when they took Salah, Mane, and Firmino off, it might actually swing the momentum in the game firmly in Ajax's favour. It actually works because I thought Jota was excellent when he came on. A player again, I mentioned Klaassen earlier. It's probably I don't know whether his time in one of the elite European leagues or an elite club like Liverpool. I mean that with the greatest respect because Ajax are an elite European club, but obviously in terms of the finances, it's a different ball game nowadays. Is someone like Tadic? I think Tadic is an excellent footballer. I really appreciated his talents when he was at Southampton. But in terms of some of the younger players that you mentioned earlier, it was clearly it's a new era for Ajax. It's going to be very hard to replicate the success they had a couple of seasons ago, but it's difficult. It's difficult, and that's why I think, in a way, as I said at the start of the show, that I think there's no shame in losing to this Liverpool team, and I do think Ajax were slightly unfortunate tonight, and I just wonder if they may go away thinking that was a chance to beat Liverpool and put a real stamp down on in this group.
Yes, I think so too. I think that this was a great opportunity for Ajax tonight. With a win in a game such as this, it gives that cushion over when you go and play Atalanta. You can take a draw, and that sort of keeps you like up above them. But unfortunately, they missed out on that. And I think that Atalanta are going to prove a great challenge in this group. Another comment came in from Kev here, who's again was praising Spurs tonight. But Ten Hag needs to play a proper striker in the Champions League games. No physicality up top. Well, I mean, Mike, you and I have been talking a fair bit about Ajax and their sort of lack of a top striker at the moment. Is Tadic the answer up top in these kinds of games still? Of course, in the Eredivisie, they can play Traore and he may score a goal or two, but in the Champions League, he's not ready for that yet. So is Tadic still the answer up front, or have Ajax really sort of missed a chance in purchasing another striker to lead them in games like this?
I think that Tadic did well tonight. I think he did well holding the ball up. He created chances. I think, Ajax need another striker. They wanted a elite level striker this summer, but just didn't get one. So I think that when you look at the bench and you've got an aging Huntelaar and Traore, I think they could have added something up front earlier, as I said earlier on, if they got brought on. In the youth team, you've got Brian Brobby coming through, scoring goals for the under-21s. But I think that Ten Hag is going to stick with Tadic for the middle. And I think at times tonight it did work. It's just towards the end of the game when he starts to get tired, that's when you need to look at the bench, look at a second option. And Ten Hag didn't do that quick enough tonight. I think that Tadic dropping just outside the penalty box and creating chances definitely works. Just tonight we had Neres and Promise that couldn't finish them.
I want to get both your opinions on one more matter, if that's all right. There's obviously no fans in the stadiums at the moment, and that may not change before this Champions League group finishes. Do you think that it's going to affect either Ajax or Liverpool? And could it throw up some really crazy results like we've seen, for example, in the Premier League? I wouldn't say in the Eredivisie so far we've seen that sort of big glut of goals. It's a high-scoring league, the Eredivisie, but I don't think it's been quite the same as the Premier League so far. So, Paul, what do you think in terms of Liverpool? Do you think that no crowd is going to affect them? So far in the league, of course, have had ups and downs.
Yeah, I actually do think it was. I remember before the Premier League resumed, there was obviously talk about some games being played at neutral venues, and I know there's clubs further down the Premier League, like Brighton, for instance, were very much against it because they thought that they'd lose the home advantage and home comforts and everything that comes from playing at the place you obviously know so well. And the argument they put forward was the fact that someone like Liverpool have got so much quality, it wouldn't matter where they played. But I know Ian Doyle, who's our chief LFC writer at the Echo, has done quite a lot of pieces on this. He really does think that Liverpool are suffering by not having fans at Anfield. Obviously, earlier this season, they performed superbly against Arsenal in a 3-1 victory. I think it was on a Monday night. That was the exception to the rule. But apart from the victory over Crystal Palace, which kind of like teed up the title, I think City lost at Chelsea the next night. There's been quite a few slip-ups or poor performances. It does make you realise just how as one the fans in this team are, because they are, and that all comes down to Jurgen Klopp and the relationship he's built with the supporters and the relationship he's built with the players and the supporters. And it does feel, obviously, with Alisson and Van Dijk being out, I think Alisson may well be back for the return game against Ajax and Anfield. But I think it gives teams a slight chance. I really do. I think we've seen it with Leeds on the opening weekend of the season. Ajax, not a dissimilar team in terms of they play really good football, play through the lines, they're adventurous. They're going to try and score goals. I think not having fans there on a big European night at Anfield will impact Liverpool. You've just got to hope from a Liverpool perspective that the quality will shine through. But no, even though, as I said earlier, that I think Liverpool are in the driving seat now because this is such a big victory, they could probably afford to drop points at, say, Atalanta, because I imagine they'll go to Midtjylland and win. You wouldn't rule it out. You rule it out, and Ajax or Atalanta going to Anfield later in the campaign and actually taking something, because the fan factor is huge.
And what do you think, Mike, from an Ajax point of view?
Yeah, I think that Ajax, like Liverpool, thrive on big European nights with the crowd, and I think that is a miss, especially tonight. I think the crowd would have got really into the players right at the start of the game, would have got into the key moments, when Promise missed. I think that would have G'd the crowd up, and then I think that something like that helps the players, and you see it a minute later they go down 1-0, and then the crowd would have gotten them up again. But yeah, I think it'll be a neutral factor, because I think that Atalanta coming to Amsterdam will be a lot closer than it could have been. I think that Atalanta actually favourites on, say, if it's a neutral pitch. I think that they could beat Ajax in Amsterdam now because there's no fans, and you take that element away. I think that Ajax and Dutch teams usually struggle in away games, and hopefully that'll even itself out with the no crowd situation. But we just need to wait and see. I think that tonight it definitely affected Ajax. I think it would have helped having 60,000 screaming fans on their side, but it's just not to be, and then you just need to manage that. And this is something that we can't really control at the moment, and we just have to see how it plays out.
Yeah, those home games, particularly for Dutch sides, fine order example of this, that they just need those home crowds. I wonder how it's going to affect them in the Europa League, because Ajax really need them in these big European nights. Still, though, they had plenty of the ball tonight, and I wonder how that'll be going to Anfield, whether that'll be any different or not. There's a comment from again David just saying that he thinks that when Ajax go to Anfield, that Liverpool should be worried. Paul, as a final note from yourself, then, do you think that the reverse fixture is going to be a similar sort of quite close affair, or do you think that Liverpool will be able to dominate the ball a lot more easily at Anfield?
I think a lot it's a play we've not mentioned so far. We obviously talked a lot about Van Dijk and Alisson, but Thiago as well. Even though he's only played a handful of games for Liverpool so far, he's only played 2 games so far. He's been absolutely superb in both of them. Against Everton, he ran the show from midfield. I think everyone knows the quality of the player, but he kind of illustrated that in the Champions League final against Paris Saint-Germain. He was man of the match, and I think Liverpool missed him tonight as well. Through the spine of the team, that they've got big players missing. If he is playing and if Alisson's playing, even without Van Dijk, I would still expect Liverpool to beat Ajax. But as we said earlier, it's a funny time for football, isn't it? No fans at Anfield, no fans at Amsterdam. I've seen some videos before the game tonight of Ajax fans outside the ground with the flares. and the team bus rolling into the arena, and it just kind of just made you real and made you wish that you were actually there, or there was a full set of fans there tonight, because this would have been a classic European game potentially between two truly great European clubs. I still think now after tonight I'm even more confident that Liverpool should get through this group, not comfortably, but should hopefully do it with a game to spare. But I think we've seen enough tonight from Ajax to suggest that they can trouble top teams. And as you both rightly said, if they'd taken the chances, it could have been a different match in the end. So Liverpool certainly won't be taking Ajax for granted when they eventually do turn up at Anfield.
I think it's going to be another cracking game between the two teams. Mike, a final word from yourself. Where do Ajax go from here, and what do they need to put right before the next Champions League games for you?
I think that tonight's the worst possible result for Ajax. It was a close loss. They'll feel really bad about it. They felt that tonight was a big chance and they didn't take it. I think that the result in the other game as well has gone totally against Ajax, and the fact that Atalanta won it so comfortably puts them into the driving force for second place, because who knows, by the time Ajax go to Denmark, Midtjylland might be a different prospect. Need to pick themselves up. They need to try and hopefully get Kudus back. Hopefully his injury is not too severe, because he's so key for Ajax this season. He's been exceptional in the midfield so far. He was a big miss tonight. And then they just need to get some sharpness. At the weekend, they played the best game season so far when they hammered Heerenveen, but before that they were pretty turgid. So they just need to get some form going domestically, then they can take that into the games against Atalanta and Midtjylland, because Midtjylland now is 2 games they need to win. And the home game against Atalanta is one they need to win now. And then hopefully try and nick something away against one of those 2 teams, or you're looking at third place.
Yeah. I still think that third place wouldn't be the worst thing ever for Ajax. They want to be in the Champions League, of course. But until they get a couple more youth players really holding up this team, it might be a little while before we can expect Ajax to be getting through the Champions League groups every season. It's great that they can go toe-to-toe with Atalanta, a very, very good Italian side. And it's going to be close, isn't it? It's going to come down to one of the games between Ajax and Atalanta, I think, as to who can win the home game, I think, and then get that a draw away from home, for example. Well, Mike, thanks for joining me tonight, and a special thanks to Paul for joining us on this Football-Oranje live stream covering the Ajax-Liverpool match tonight. If you do enjoy this kind of thing, then do give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and see you again for our next live stream after the match. Thanks, Mike and Paul.
Cheers.
Cheers.